The afternoon sun hung heavy over Venice Beach, casting long shadows across the crowded parking lot. It was one of those perfect California days where the ocean breeze mixed with the smell of sunscreen and hot asphalt. Families wandered back from the beach, their arms full of towels and coolers. Street performers entertained tourists a few blocks away, their music drifting through the warm air. Near the entrance of the lot, a young girl stood beside a silver sedan, bouncing slightly on her toes with barely contained excitement. She looked to be about 12 years old, with her hair styled in neat braids decorated with bright purple beads that caught the sunlight. In her hands, she held a brand new skateboard, turning it over carefully to admire the colorful stickers she had spent all morning choosing and placing just right. There were shooting stars, lightning bolts, and her favorite superhero emblems, each one positioned exactly where she wanted it. Her mother had ducked into a nearby cafe just moments before, promising to be quick while she grabbed their lunch. The girl didn't mind waiting. She was too caught up in her own little world, imagining herself gliding smoothly down the boardwalk like the older kids she had watched for weeks. She had begged her parents for this skateboard for months, saving her allowance and promising she would be careful. Today was supposed to be the day she finally learned to ride it properly. She hummed quietly to herself, occasionally glancing toward the cafe window to see if her mother was coming back yet. The parking lot buzzed with activity around her. Car doors slammed. Kids laughed. Seagulls called overhead, hoping for dropped French fries. Everything felt normal and safe and full of possibility. Then she heard them. The deep rumble of motorcycle engines growing louder, cutting through the ambient noise of the beach afternoon. The girl looked up, her eyes widening with curiosity rather than fear. She'd always thought motorcycles looked cool, powerful machines that roared past on the highway. A group of about 6 or 7 bikers rolled into the parking lot, their engines creating a symphony of mechanical thunder that made people turn and look. Most of the bikers seemed ordinary enough. They wore leather vests and sunglasses, laughing and talking to each other as they maneuvered their bikes into empty spots. Some of them looked friendly, nodding at passers-by. They seemed like regular people who just happened to ride motorcycles on the weekend, probably heading to the beach like everyone else. But one of them was different. Even from a distance, something about him felt off. He was a large man with a scraggly beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in months. Tattoos covered both his arms, creeping up his neck and disappearing under his faded band t-shirt. His leather vest had seen better days, worn and cracked in places. As he swung his leg over his bike and removed his helmet, his eyes scanned the parking lot with an expression that made the girl instinctively uncomfortable. Those eyes landed on her. And something in his face changed. His mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile, something closer to a sneer. The girl felt the shift immediately, the way you can sense when someone is looking at you with bad intentions. Her excitement dimmed just a little. She clutched her skateboard a bit tighter, suddenly very aware that she was standing alone. What the girl didn't notice, what nobody in that parking lot noticed at first, was the black SUV that had just pulled into a spot several rows away. The windows were tinted dark and it looked like a dozen other expensive vehicles parked nearby. Inside, a man sat in the driver's seat, checking his phone before heading into the cafe for a quick coffee. He had a rare break between meetings and had decided to stop at one of his favorite spots in Venice Beach, a place where he could usually grab a drink without too much fuss. This man happened to be Dwayne Johnson. Not in character, not promoting a movie, just a regular afternoon in his busy life. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, his trademark Under Armour bag sitting in the passenger seat. He had been scrolling through emails trying to clear his inbox before his next appointment, but something made him look up. Maybe it was the sound of the motorcycles. Maybe it was instinct. Whatever it was, his eyes drifted toward the scene unfolding across the parking lot, and he set his phone down in the cup holder. Back at the sedan, the girl tried to focus on her skateboard again, but she could feel the man's stare boring into her. She pretended not to notice, examining a sticker that had bubbled slightly, pressing it down with her thumb. Her mother had only been gone for a few minutes, but it suddenly felt much longer. The cafe door seemed very far away. The man with the scraggly beard said something to his friends, gesturing in the girl's direction. A couple of them glanced over and then looked away, clearly uncomfortable. One of them said something back, shaking his head, but the man ignored him. He started walking toward the girl, his heavy boots thudding against the pavement with each step. The girl's heart began to beat faster. She glanced toward the cafe again, hoping to see her mother's familiar face appearing in the window. Nothing yet. The footsteps grew closer. She could hear them clearly now over all the other sounds of the parking lot. Part of her wanted to run into the cafe, but another part of her felt frozen in place, unsure if she was overreacting or if her instincts were right. Inside the black SUV, Dwayne Johnson had stopped checking his emails entirely. His attention was fully focused on what he was seeing. The body language was clear even from a distance. An adult man approaching a child who was alone. The child's posture changing from relaxed to tense. The man's aggressive walk, his intent visible in every movement. Johnson's jaw tightened. He knew that walk. He had seen it before in his life, had been on the receiving end of it when he was younger, had witnessed it countless times since becoming famous. It was the walk of someone who had decided to make themselves feel bigger by making someone else feel small. The man reached the girl and stood over her, using his height to intimidate. Even though she was trying to look brave, her hands were shaking slightly as she held her skateboard. The purple beads in her hair caught the light as she looked up at him, her young face trying to maintain composure, despite the fear that was clearly building inside her. What happened next would change this ordinary afternoon into something none of them would ever forget. This moment, frozen in the California sunshine, was about to become a lesson in courage, consequences, and what it really means to stand up for what's right. The man with the scraggly beard stopped right in front of the girl, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at his face. His shadow fell across her, blocking out the warm afternoon sun. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. His eyes were cold, and there was something cruel in the way he smiled down at her. Well, he said, his voice loud enough that people nearby could hear. What do we have here? He pointed at her skateboard with a thick finger, letting out a harsh laugh. You've got to be kidding me. What's a girl like you doing with a skateboard? The girl felt her stomach drop. She had encountered mean people before, the way all kids do. But there was something different about this. Something more dangerous about a grown man choosing to pick on a child he didn't even know. She hugged the skateboard closer to her chest like it might protect her somehow. I'm just waiting for my mom, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She hoped that would be enough, that he would just leave her alone and go away. But he didn't leave. Instead, he laughed again, louder this time. Waiting for your mom, he repeated mockingly. Let me guess, she bought you that fancy board, right? Probably trying to make you fit in with the cool kids? His voice dripped with contempt. Newsflash, sweetie. Girls who look like you don't skateboard. You should stick to other things. Things that suit you better. The words hit her like physical blows. The girl's eyes started to burn with tears, but she blinked hard, refusing to let them fall. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Around them, people were starting to notice. A woman loading groceries into her car paused, frowning. An elderly couple walking past slowed their steps. But nobody said anything. Nobody stepped in. They all seemed caught in that terrible moment of uncertainty, wondering if they should get involved or if it was none of their business. The man noticed the attention and seemed to feed off it. He raised his voice even more. Look at this, he called out to his biker friends who were still standing by their motorcycles. Got ourselves a little wannabe over here. Probably can't even stand on the thing without falling flat on her face. Some of his friends shifted uncomfortably, looking away. One of them, a woman with long gray hair, actually shook her head in disgust at his behavior and walked toward the beach without him. But the man didn't care. He was on a roll now, enjoying the power he felt over this young girl. How much did that board cost, huh? Bet it was expensive. Your parents probably work real hard for their money, and here you are, wasting it on something you'll never be good at. He bent down slightly, getting closer to her face. You don't belong here, kid. This isn't your scene. Why don't you run along and find something more your speed? The girl's hands were trembling now, gripping the skateboard so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. A single tear escaped down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand. She wanted to say something back, wanted to defend herself, but the words stuck in her throat. She was 12 years old, standing alone against a full-grown man, who seemed to enjoy making her feel small and worthless. Please leave me alone, she finally managed to say, her voice cracking slightly. I didn't do anything to you. Leave you alone? The man straightened up, spreading his arms wide in an exaggerated gesture. "I'm trying to help you out here. Trying to save you from embarrassing yourself. You should be thanking me." He looked around at the growing crowd of onlookers. "Am I right? Someone's got to tell her the truth." Nobody responded. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. People looked at their shoes, at their phones, anywhere but at what was happening. It was one of those moments that reveals something sad about human nature. How easy it is to stay quiet when speaking up feels risky or awkward. The girl glanced desperately toward the cafe. Where was her mother? It felt like she had been gone forever, though in reality it had only been maybe 5 or 6 minutes. 5 or 6 minutes that felt like an eternity, while this stranger tore into her with his words. She could see other people watching through the cafe windows, but they seemed frozen too, unsure what to do. The man wasn't finished. He circled around her slowly like a predator. "And what's with your hair?" he said, his voice taking on an even nastier edge, those beads clicking around. "You trying to make some kind of statement? You think you're special or something?" His words carried layers of ugly prejudice that made several people in the crowd gasp quietly. This wasn't just general meanness anymore. This had crossed a line into something much worse. The girl felt something break inside her. All the excitement from earlier, all the joy she had felt about her new skateboard and learning to ride it, drained away completely. She felt exposed and humiliated, standing there in the parking lot while this man said horrible things about her appearance, her interests, her very existence. The purple beads her mother had helped her pick out that morning suddenly felt like a target. The stickers on her skateboard that had made her so happy now seemed childish and foolish. She wanted to disappear, to become invisible, to be anywhere but here in this moment. More tears were coming now and she couldn't stop them. They rolled down her cheeks silently as she stared at the ground, wishing the pavement would just open up and swallow her whole. The man saw the tears and smiled with satisfaction. He had broken her spirit, and that seemed to be exactly what he wanted. "That's what I thought," he said triumphantly. "Can't even handle a little truth. Maybe next time think twice before—" But he never got to finish that sentence. A voice cut through the parking lot like a knife. It was deep and powerful, carrying authority that made everyone freeze instantly. "Hey." Just that one word. But the way it was spoken made the man stop mid-sentence and turn around. What he saw made his face go from smug superiority to shock in less than a second. Walking toward them with purpose and intensity was Dwayne Johnson, his massive frame impossible to mistake. Even in just a simple black t-shirt and jeans, he looked like exactly what he was. Someone you absolutely did not want to mess with. His expression was serious, his jaw set. His eyes locked directly on the man with an intensity that made several people step back instinctively. The parking lot went completely silent. Even the seagulls seemed to stop calling. Everyone watched as the rock closed the distance between them, each step deliberate and controlled. The girl looked up, her tear-stained face showing confusion and hope and disbelief all at once. The man with the scraggly beard suddenly looked much smaller than he had moments before, his confidence evaporating like water on hot asphalt. This was about to become a very different kind of afternoon. Dwayne Johnson covered the distance across the parking lot in what felt like seconds. Though he wasn't running, he didn't need to run. There was something about the way he moved that commanded attention, a quiet strength that made everyone around him hold their breath. The man with the scraggly beard stood frozen, his mouth half open, still processing what was happening. "I watched everything you just did," Dwayne said, his voice level but carrying across the entire parking lot. "Every word was clear and deliberate. Every single word that came out of your mouth. Every time you tried to make that child feel small." He stopped about 6 feet away, his arms crossed over his chest. Even standing still, he radiated power. "You want to explain to me what exactly you think you're doing?" The man stammered, his earlier confidence completely gone. We were just talking, man. Just having a conversation." His eyes darted around, looking for support from his biker friends, but they had all suddenly become very interested in their motorcycles or their phones. Nobody was rushing to his defense. "A conversation?" Dwayne's eyebrows raised. "Is that what you call it when a grown man corners a child and tears her down? When you mock her appearance and tell her she doesn't belong?" He took one step closer and the man actually flinched. "Because where I come from, we call that something else entirely. We call that being a bully. We call that being a coward." The crowd that had gathered was growing larger now. People had stopped what they were doing all across the parking lot. Phones were coming out, not pointed at Dwayne for celebrity photos, but recording what was happening because they sensed this was important. This was something that mattered. But before Dwayne continued with the man, he did something that surprised everyone. He turned away from the biker completely and walked over to the girl. As he approached her, his entire demeanor changed. The intensity melted away, replaced with warmth and gentleness. He knelt down on one knee so he could be at her eye level, this massive movie star making himself small for a crying child. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice now carrying none of the steel it had held moments before. "Are you okay?" The girl just stared at him, tears still wet on her cheeks, unable to process that The Rock himself was kneeling in front of her, asking if she was all right. She nodded slightly, though they both knew it wasn't really true. Dwayne smiled at her, that warm, genuine smile that had charmed millions of people. "That's a really cool skateboard you've got there," he said, gesturing to it. "Can I see it?" With trembling hands, she held it out to him. He took it carefully, examining the stickers like they were the most interesting things he had ever seen. "These are awesome. You picked all these out yourself?" She nodded again, finding her voice enough to whisper a small, "Yes." "I can tell you put a lot of thought into this," he continued, pointing to each sticker. "Superheroes, shooting stars, lightning bolts. You've got great taste. And you know what? I think you're going to be amazing at skateboarding." "You know why?" She shook her head. "Because anyone with this much passion, anyone who cares enough to make their board special like this, they've already got what it takes. The rest is just practice." A small smile broke through the girl's tears. It was tiny, barely there, but it was real. Dwayne handed the skateboard back to her with both hands, like he was presenting her with something precious. "You belong anywhere you want to be," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Not him, not anyone. You understand me?" This time when she nodded, there was strength in it. Dwayne stood back up to his full height and turned to face the man again. The warmth vanished instantly, replaced by something much colder. The transformation was so complete it was almost scary. "Now," he said, his voice dropping lower, "let's talk about what just happened here." The man tried to puff himself up, tried to salvage some dignity. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. This is between me and between you and a 12-year-old girl." Dwayne cut him off. "A child who was standing alone, minding her own business, excited about her new skateboard. That's who you chose to pick on today?" He shook his head slowly. "Let me tell you something about myself. I grew up facing people who thought I didn't belong. People who looked at me and decided, without knowing a single thing about me, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't fit, that I should stay in my lane." The parking lot was completely silent now except for his voice. Even the traffic noise from the nearby street seemed to have faded away. "And you know what I promised myself when I was young? I promised that if I ever had the chance, if I ever had the platform, I would never let that happen to someone else if I could stop it. I would never stand by and watch while someone tried to crush another person's spirit." He took another step toward the man, and this time the biker actually backed up slightly. "You want to know what I saw? I saw you approach a child who was excited and happy. I saw you use your size and your age to intimidate her. I heard you mock her appearance, her interests, her right to be in this parking lot. I watched you try to make her feel worthless." His voice got even more intense. "And the worst part? You enjoyed it. You fed off her fear. You felt powerful making a little girl cry." The man's face had gone red. Whether from shame or anger, it was hard to tell. "I didn't mean. I was just messing around. People are too sensitive these days. Can't even joke anymore without joke." Dwayne's voice rose for the first time. "You think that was a joke? Tell me, what part was funny? Was it when you told her she doesn't belong? Was it when you mocked her hair? Was it when you made her cry?" He gestured toward the girl who was watching with wide eyes, clutching her skateboard. "Does she look like she thought you were joking?" Several people in the crowd murmured agreement. A few actually started clapping, but Dwayne held up a hand to stop them. This wasn't about applause. This was about accountability. "Here's what's going to happen," he continued. "You're going to apologize to her. A real apology, not some half-hearted sorry that you think will get me off your back. A genuine apology where you acknowledge what you did wrong." The man looked around desperately, but there was no escape. His biker friends were avoiding his gaze. The crowd was clearly on Dwayne's side. He was cornered, and for the first time he was the one who felt small and powerless. Okay, I'm sorry, he muttered toward the ground. Not to the ground, Dwayne said firmly. To her. Look at her and apologize. The man finally looked at the girl, really looked at her, and maybe he saw what everyone else saw. A kid who just wanted to learn to skateboard. A kid who had done nothing wrong. A kid whose afternoon he had ruined for no reason other than his own ugliness inside. I'm sorry, he said, and this time there was something closer to genuine remorse in his voice. I shouldn't have said those things to you. It was wrong. The girl didn't respond, just held her skateboard tighter. Dwayne nodded at her, a silent communication that she didn't have to accept the apology if she didn't want to. She had that right. But then Dwayne turned to address not just the man but everyone watching. This is important for all of us to remember, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the parking lot. Dwayne turned slowly, making eye contact with people throughout the crowd that had gathered. There must have been 40 or 50 people now, drawn by the commotion, by the presence of a celebrity, but staying because of what was unfolding. His voice carried clearly across the parking lot, and every person stood completely still, listening. This moment right here, what we all just witnessed, this happens every single day. He began. Maybe not with me standing here. Maybe not in a parking lot in Venice Beach, but somewhere right now someone is being made to feel less than. Someone is being told they don't belong. Someone is being targeted simply because of how they look. He paused, letting the words sink in. And most of the time people walk by. They pretend they don't see it. They tell themselves it's not their business. An older woman in the crowd nodded, her hand over her mouth. A young man in a business suit looked down at his shoes, maybe remembering a time when he had done exactly that, walked past instead of speaking up. I get it, Dwayne continued. It's uncomfortable to get involved. It's scary sometimes. You might think, what if they turn on me? What if I make it worse? What if I'm misreading the situation? He gestured back toward the girl who was watching him with complete attention now, her tears drying on her cheeks. But look at her face. Look at what staying silent does. It tells that young girl that nobody cares, that the person hurting her is right, that she really doesn't belong. The man with the scraggly beard was trying to edge away slowly, hoping to slip through the crowd and escape. But Dwayne caught the movement out of the corner of his eye. Stay right there, he said, not even looking directly at him. We're not done. The man froze. Something in Dwayne's voice made it clear this wasn't a request. Dwayne walked back over to the girl, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Can I tell everyone here something about you? He asked her quietly. She nodded, curious. He turned back to the crowd, his hand still resting supportively on her shoulder. This young lady, after being verbally attacked by a man 3 times her size, you know what she did? She didn't run away crying, even though she had every right to. She stood her ground. She told him to leave her alone. She asked him, I didn't do anything to you. Do you all know how much courage that takes? The crowd murmured appreciation. Several people smiled at the girl, and she stood a little straighter. That's strength right there, Dwayne said. Real strength. Not the fake kind where you pick on people smaller than you to feel big. This last part was directed at the man, who flinched at the words. Real strength is standing up when you're scared. Real strength is keeping your dignity when someone tries to take it from you. A woman near the front of the crowd started clapping, and this time Dwayne didn't stop it. The applause spread through the gathering, genuine and heartfelt. The girl's face broke into a real smile now, the kind that reached her eyes. She looked down at her skateboard, then back up at Dwayne, then at all the people clapping for her. The afternoon that had been ruined just minutes ago was transforming into something entirely different. But Dwayne raised his hand, and the crowd quieted down. Here's the thing, though, he said, his tone becoming more serious again. Applauding is nice. Supporting her now is nice. But where were all of you 5 minutes ago? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and pointed. People shifted on their feet. Some looked guilty. I'm not saying that to make anyone feel bad. I'm saying it because we all need to do better. We need to be the person who steps in before someone else has to. We need to be the voice that says, not on my watch. He walked toward the middle of the crowd now, no longer addressing just the biker, but speaking to everyone. I've been blessed with a platform. Millions of people know who I am. So yeah, when I step in, people listen. But every single one of you has power too. You have a voice. You have the ability to say something when you see injustice. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be physically intimidating. You just have to care enough to speak up. A teenage boy in the crowd raised his hand tentatively like he was in school. Dwayne pointed to him. Yeah, go ahead. But what if the person gets aggressive? The boy asked. What if trying to help makes things worse? It was a fair question, one that many people probably had. Dwayne nodded thoughtfully. That's a real concern. I'm not saying you should put yourself in danger. If a situation looks violent or dangerous, call the police, get help, but do something. Even just staying present, being a witness, letting the person being targeted know they're not alone, that matters. He pointed back toward the girl. If I hadn't been here, if this had continued, how much damage could have been done to her spirit? How much would she have internalized his words? Maybe she would have gone home and put that skateboard in the closet and never touched it again. Maybe she would have started believing she really doesn't belong. The man with the scraggly beard spoke up suddenly, his voice defensive. Okay, I get it. I messed up. I said I was sorry. How long are you going to drag this out? There was an edge of anger creeping back into his voice. Like the initial shock was wearing off and his ego was reasserting itself. Dwayne turned to face him fully, and the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. How long am I going to drag this out? He repeated slowly. You spent how long tearing into that little girl? 5 minutes, 10? You made sure she felt every word, didn't you? You took your time making her cry. He walked toward the man again, and once more the biker backed up. So yeah, we're going to take the time to make sure this lesson sticks, because I don't want you walking away from here thinking, well, I got caught this time. Better be more careful next time. I want you walking away from here changed. The parking lot was so quiet you could hear the distant sound of waves crashing on the beach blocks away. Let me ask you something, Dwayne continued. Do you have kids? Nieces, nephews, anyone young in your life that you care about? The man nodded reluctantly. Imagine someone talking to them the way you talk to her. Imagine some stranger making them feel worthless, mocking how they look, telling them they don't belong. How would that make you feel? For the first time, the man's face showed something other than defensiveness or fear. There was a flicker of understanding, maybe even shame. I wouldn't like it, he admitted quietly. You wouldn't like it, Dwayne repeated. So why did you think it was okay to do it to someone else's child? The man had no answer. He just stood there, the weight of his actions finally seeming to fully settle on him. That little girl has a mother who picked out those beads with her, who bought her that skateboard because her daughter was excited about learning something new, who trusted that the world would be kind enough to let her daughter stand in a parking lot for 5 minutes without being attacked. Right at that moment, the cafe door burst open and a woman came rushing out, her face panicked. Baby, are you okay? Someone inside said. She trailed off as she took in the scene, her daughter standing there with her skateboard, the massive crowd. Dwayne Johnson, the man who looked thoroughly defeated. What happened? She asked, rushing to her daughter's side. The girl immediately wrapped her arms around her mother, and for a moment she looked like she might start crying again. But she held it together, instead looking up at her mom with an expression that was equal parts relief and excitement. Mom, this man was saying mean things to me, but then, she turned to point at Dwayne, her voice filling with awe. Then he showed up and helped me. The mother's eyes went wide as she looked from her daughter to Dwayne to the crowd of people with their phones out. Her protective instincts were clearly firing on all cylinders, trying to piece together what had happened to her baby while she was inside grabbing sandwiches. Dwayne stepped forward, his demeanor once again shifting to something gentle and reassuring. Ma'am, your daughter is okay, he said calmly, but something happened that you need to know about. He gestured toward the man with the scraggly beard. That individual approached your daughter and said some very inappropriate and hurtful things to her. He mocked her, intimidated her, and made comments about her appearance. I witnessed the whole thing from my car and decided to intervene. The mother's face transformed from confusion to anger in an instant. She pulled her daughter closer and turned toward the man, her eyes blazing. You did what? Her voice was shaking with rage. You came after my baby? My 12-year-old daughter who was just standing here waiting for me? She took a step toward him, and several people in the crowd moved forward too, creating a protective barrier around the mother and daughter. The man held up his hands defensively. Look, I already apologized. I made a mistake, okay? I don't know what else you want from me. A mistake? The mother's voice rose. A mistake is forgetting your keys. A mistake is taking a wrong turn. Deliberately targeting a child and trying to tear her down, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. That's who you are. Her words cut through the parking lot like razors, and the man actually seemed to shrink under the weight of them. Dwayne gently touched the mother's arm. I understand your anger. Any parent would feel the same way. But your daughter handled this with incredible strength, and she's safe now. What matters most is making sure she knows she did nothing wrong, and that what he said about her isn't true. The mother took a deep breath, clearly trying to compose herself. She knelt down to her daughter's level, cupping her face in both hands. Sweetheart, you know none of what he said is true, right? You belong anywhere you want to be. You're beautiful, you're smart, and you're going to be an amazing skateboarder. The girl nodded, and fresh tears rolled down her cheeks, but these were different tears. These were the release of everything she'd been holding inside. I was so scared, Mom, she whispered. He was so mean and nobody was doing anything and I didn't know what to do. I know, baby. I know. The mother held her daughter tight and several women in the crowd wiped at their own eyes. There was something deeply moving about watching this mother comfort her child. Something that struck at the heart of every parent present. After a moment, the mother stood back up, still keeping one arm around her daughter. She looked at Dwayne with gratitude that words couldn't quite capture. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for being there when I couldn't be. Thank you for standing up for my daughter. Dwayne smiled warmly. That's what we're supposed to do for each other. Look out for one another, especially for our kids. He turned his attention back to the girl, pulling his phone from his pocket. Hey, I know this afternoon started rough, but what do you say we turn it around? Want to take a picture with me? And here, let me see that skateboard again. The girl's face lit up completely, the last traces of fear and sadness melting away. She handed him the skateboard eagerly, and he pulled out a silver marker from his pocket. I always keep one of these handy, he said with a wink. Never know when you might need to sign something. He wrote across the bottom of the skateboard in bold letters. The girl couldn't see what he was writing from her angle, and she bounced on her toes with anticipation. When he finished and turned the board around, everyone could see what he'd written. Never stop being you. You belong everywhere. Stay strong. And then his signature with a small drawing of his signature eyebrow next to it. The girl gasped with pure joy, holding the skateboard like it was made of gold. Her mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face now too. Can we take that picture now? Dwayne asked. The mother quickly fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking slightly. Dwayne knelt down next to the girl and she held up her newly signed skateboard proudly. Her smile was radiant, genuine. All traces of the earlier trauma transformed into something powerful. The mother took several photos. And then several people in the crowd offered to take pictures so the mother could be in them too. For a few minutes, the parking lot became an impromptu photo session. The afternoon sun catching the purple beads in the girl's hair as she posed with her skateboard and her hero. But Dwayne hadn't forgotten about the man. As the photos were wrapping up, he stood and walked back over to where the biker was standing. Most of his friends had actually left by this point, quietly slipping away on their motorcycles, clearly wanting no part of what their associate had done. Only one remained, a woman with gray hair who had stayed specifically to tell the man afterward that she was disgusted by his behavior. Before you leave, Dwayne said to him, his voice lower now, meant just for the man's ears, though some nearby people could still hear. I want you to understand something. This moment right here, it's a gift. You got caught. You got called out. And yeah, it's embarrassing and uncomfortable, but it's also a chance to be better. Some people go their whole lives being cruel and never facing real consequences. You're facing them right now. The man nodded slowly, and for the first time he actually looked at the girl, really looked at her, seeing her as a complete person rather than a target. I am sorry, he said, and this time it seemed to come from somewhere deeper. To both of you, he added, glancing at the mother. I got no excuse. I was out of line. Yes, you were, the mother said coldly, and I hope you remember this feeling next time you think about treating someone this way. The man nodded again and started to walk toward his motorcycle. But the woman with gray hair blocked his path. Don't even think about riding with our group anymore, she told him loudly enough for everyone to hear. We don't associate with people who bully kids. You're on your own. She turned to the mother and daughter. I'm sorry this happened. Most of us aren't like him. Then she walked to her own bike, started it up, and rode away. leaving the man standing alone. As he finally left the parking lot, several people in the crowd actually started discussing what they'd witnessed. They weren't just recording anymore or watching passively. They were talking about times they had stayed silent when they should have spoken up. They were promising themselves and each other that they would be braver next time. Dwayne had sparked something in them, a recognition that they had more power than they realized. The mother approached Dwayne one more time as the crowd began to disperse. "I don't know how to thank you properly," she said. "You didn't just help my daughter today. You taught her something important. You showed her that there are good people in the world who will stand up for what's right." Dwayne shook his head humbly. "Your daughter already knew that. She stood up for herself before I even got there. She told him to leave her alone. She's got that strength inside her already. I just backed her up." He looked down at the girl who was still admiring her signed skateboard. "You keep being brave like you were today, okay? And you keep skating. Don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do." "I won't," the girl promised, her voice strong and clear. "I'm going to practice every day until I'm really good. And then maybe I'll teach other kids who are scared to try." "Now that's what I'm talking about," Dwayne said, holding out his fist for a fist bump. She bumped it enthusiastically, grinning from ear to ear. As Dwayne finally walked back toward his SUV, several people approached him not for autographs or selfies, but to shake his hand and thank him. An elderly man with tears in his eyes told him about his granddaughter, who faced similar treatment at her school. A young woman shared that she wished someone had stood up for her when she was being bullied as a kid. Each story reinforced why what happened today mattered so much. Within hours, the videos that people had recorded started appearing online. The footage spread across social media like wildfire. But it wasn't just celebrity gossip or entertainment news. This felt different. People shared it with captions about standing up to bullying, about using your platform for good, about protecting children. News outlets picked up the story. But the real impact was in the comment sections and the discussions it sparked in homes and schools and workplaces around the country. The girl's mother, after getting permission from her daughter, shared their side of the story too. She posted the photo of her daughter with Dwayne and the signed skateboard, along with a heartfelt message about gratitude and the importance of allies. She didn't show her daughter's face in the public posts, protecting her privacy, but she made sure people understood the real impact of what had happened. In the days that followed, something beautiful emerged. The local skateboarding community reached out to the family, offering free lessons and welcoming the girl into their group with open arms. A skate shop in Venice Beach heard about the incident and invited her in, fitting her with proper safety gear and giving her tips from professional skaters. Other kids who had faced similar bullying found courage in her story and began pursuing their own interests without fear. The man with the scraggly beard apparently took the lesson to heart too, according to reports that filtered back. He enrolled in an